And the addiction to money is no different than the other addiction, right, Jeff?
Mm-hmm. And addictions by themselves are not bad. I write in the book, and I joke in the classes I teach for freshmen in high school. I start the question off with, name some addictions, and all the kids are like, well, alcohol, drugs, nicotine, vaping, and I'm like, how about telling the truth? Is that an addiction? Exercise, eating healthy. Good relationships. Those are all positive addictions. So the word addiction is thrown around way too haphazardly today, and I think people need to start saying it's okay to say addiction. We just want the good addictions. We don't want the bad ones. And again, I think we're all addicted to money, but some of us abuse it. Some of us, it abuses us. There's a relationship there where it's dysfunctional because I don't treat the money with respect, and the money ends up owning me. And it's almost a substance abuse problem as opposed to being addicted. I mean, we're all addicted to money, right? I mean, at the end of the day.
We talked about our individual kind of success in this business and how it kind of happens. When you first start out, you're like, man, if I could just get to here, everything would be great.
Mm-hmm.
And
we've
had this conversation. but then I have to get to the next point, right, and everything will be great. And then you get to the next point where you're financially everything you need to have to be happy, but you still can't stop thinking about getting to the next point.
Right.
And it starts to maybe take away from other things in your life.
Right.
Like spending time with your family or taking the vacation. And you kind of have to step back and say, is the money really that important? Or has this become just an addiction to me to say, hey, can I do this? Can I do X? Can I do what people have spent an entire career trying to do? Right. Can I do that in 1 year? And that was my goal at one point. Can I do what people have spent an entire career to do in 1 year?
Well, quite often the pursuit of success is masking an underlying issue, an underlying problem. So you have people like Anthony Bourdain, who was on top of the world in regards to his profession, a chef and having these popular shows and pretty much a cult following.
Absolutely.
And he hangs himself in a hotel room in France, taping his shows. And you peel back underneath what happened to him, and you see an individual that had issues with substance abuse, alcohol addiction, heroin addiction, his whole life, and he'd been in and out of rehab. His mom, I think her name's Gladys, was quoted in the New York Times as saying, Anthony was the last person on the planet that I would expect that would hang themselves. And if you think about it, those are typically the ones that do, the ones we don't expect. Yeah. So as parents, as business owners, we need to be cognizant of these things. I was approached in 2018 by Investment News to do some research or talk about the opioid addiction, which took my son, but how that affects the financial planning industry. And there's lots of financial advisors that not only have family relationships, but clients. The client will call in. You see a very weird pattern with the withdrawals, let's say, Roger, where they're continually taking money out, and that this person, there's something going on. And I think as a financial advisor, sometimes we're on the first lines of defense.
You took the words out of my mouth. We're typically the first people to see the pattern.
But we're bound by law not to say anything, which is really I guess a challenge for us to try to figure out how we know in our heart someone's doing something nefarious to them or themselves. How do we help?
I mean, I think the good news is we've come out with a trusted contact, and FINRA is trying to do things to make it so that we can try to keep people that are potentially in danger, maybe not of themselves, but of being taken advantage of.
Right.
We have the ability to contact family members or someone they trust in case it happens. And it's funny, we've all talked about the addicting nature of like accumulating the money. That's what we typically talk about, the hoarders. But then there's the other side of it that we very rarely talk about. That's the addiction of spending money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think you've mentioned addiction and related it to today's environment with COVID and people are down and people are unemployed. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the same thing with overspending though, because it's easy to get there and go to Amazon and click, I need this pair of shoes. Yeah. And I was on last night. I'm like, I'm organizing my garage. So I need this basket from GarageWorks and I need this basket. And my wife bought some Barbie toy for my daughter last night. I'm like, man, 20 years ago, you never could have done this, but it's easy to overspend because it's fun to get online and shop. And we don't talk about that much, but it's almost like it makes people feel good.
Well, and it was you had to make an effort to go spend money in the past. You had to get in the car. It's cold out. You got to drive to Target, drive to wherever. Now you can just sit in the confines of your house and a cup of coffee or whatever you're drinking, and you can sit there and just spend money. So they've made it much easier. And then you throw in COVID, and locally here you got the big storm, and people are just kind of holed up in their houses. And I can sit there and watch the UPS truck come to all my neighbors and stuff. I mean, it's more frequent now, which is, I guess, understandable in a way, because that's kind of how commerce moves today. But it kind of makes you wonder how many of these people are just bored, and how many of these people are the opposite. We talked about the opposite of the hoarder is the financial spender.
Well, I might be one of those, because there's a joke in my neighborhood that the UPS truck's at my house 3 times a day.
Yeah.
We have a nanny, and she comes over, and most people think it's the wives ordering this stuff, but it's typically me. I've got an addiction to fishing equipment.
Yeah, I've seen your tackle boxes.
But it is easy, because you're like, man, I need that. And I actually spent about 2 weeks, about a month ago, organizing my fishing tackle. And my wife was like, what are you doing? And I started putting everything on the wall to see what I had. And I realized I'd bought the same thing,
right,
like 15 different times, because I didn't know I had it. And it become a little bit of an addiction. Like, I have to have this, even though I haven't used what I have in the last 5 years. Give me another one. Your brother, he's a fishing rod manager and sells fishing rods. Well, I have to have another fishing rod.
Right.
We can only fish with one.
Well, fish don't know how many poles you have. I mean, exactly.
But it's the analogy. So there's both sides of that addiction spectrum, that, like, man, I really need to have this. It'll catch the next big fish, or whatever it may be. So I think that's interesting that you actually talk about that a lot.